Thank you for joining our YouTube TA Tech Unbox today. We've got Siadhal Maghos from Metaview. He's going to give us a demo and he's going to show us some new features as well that you'll be interested in seeing. So I'll hand over to you, Siadhal.
Thanks so much, Darren. Pumped to be taking you around the platform. MetaView, frankly, is super simple. So hopefully, I'll come in. On the demo clock. Hopefully, we'll come in pretty snappy. Really, what MetaView does is three things. I'll take you through all three of those things. So number one, it takes interview notes for you, not just writes the notes, but actually structures and summarizes the conversation in exactly the way a recruiter wants it. Great benefit of that is it means recruiters can actually focus on the conversation instead of note taking. Number two is it helps recruiters or interviewers, hiring managers with their write-ups after those interviews. So actually, whether that's filling in the ATS or sending some feedback to other members of the hiring team, often sort of something that can take a good chunk of time. We help you complete in just a few seconds. And then the third thing is we have an assistant an AI assistant that essentially remembers everything that you've discussed with every candidate ever, which can be useful for a whole long tail of reasons, and we'll go through some in a second. So just jumping over to the product now. So I'm going to jump into Metaview. So here I am on an interview that I ran a couple of days ago. What you're seeing in front of you are the notes that Metaview produced automatically off the back of my interview. So you can see there's a question that I asked, there's a bullet point summary of the answer the candidate gave, question, bullet point summary of the answer. So this is completely automatic. I did not have to configure Metaview in any way. This is an intelligent assistant who essentially joins me in my interviews, takes my notes for me, and then gives them to me 2 minutes after the call is over in like a way that is 10x better than I could have done myself anyway. The big sort of juicy thing about this is as the interviewer, as the recruiter, I now just completely focus on actually engaging with the candidate, being curious, being engaging, being present, maybe even influencing that person because I have the sort of the mental capacity to do it because I'm not so focused on taking notes because I'm super confident that Metaview is going to do a better job of that for me. Now, the way to think about this is these are still your notes. So if I say, well, you know what, Metaview, this is TMI, it's too much information. Make it more succinct, please. I can just press a button, Metaview will make it more succinct. And I don't actually want it in bullet point. I want it in natural language. So please write it in prose for me. Again, just a click of a button and Metaview will rewrite those notes in prose. I tend to like it in bullets and I sort of increase the detail level. So that's how I use it. And what I usually do with this is I'll copy and paste a bunch of this into my scorecard. I might even explore certain moments. Maybe if I want to sort of check out, hey, this is like an important moment. Let me see what really happened. I can click on this button here, jump to transcript, and I can play back that actual moment. But in this case, I'm pretty happy with the notes and I want to go ahead and fill in my scorecard. So this was bucket one, right? Take my notes for me so I can focus on the conversation. Now I'm going to do my write-up. And so what we've got here is we use Lever here at Metaview, but we actually integrate with a bunch of ATSs. I'm going to click on the scorecard option. And you'll see that some parts of the scorecard are already pre-filled. So this is not a Metaview scorecard. This is whichever ATS you use, we pull through the scorecard and we identify which of these fields in your scorecard can our AI pre-fill for you because it's just asking for facts. So for example, previous experience, Metaview was in this interview. It knows when and where the candidate talked about their previous experience. So it's pre-filled that for me. I don't have to write that. Again, I'm a sort of a creative, I'm the creative human who's involved in trying to recruit this person. I don't want to spend myself regurgitating what they said and putting it into this box. Metaview can do that for me. When there are more subjective parts of my feedback form or scorecard, so for example, communication skills, Metaview doesn't fill that in. So it knows when to help and essentially when to let you as the human do the driving. So in this case, I might sort of say, they were strong, and I might drag and drop some evidence into my scorecard to help me sort of write it more quickly. But fundamentally, it's turning what is a quite laborious thing of filling in a scorecard into something that just takes really just a couple of minutes. And I have much better data in the scorecard too. Really helpful for recruiters because it saves them time. Also really helpful for recruiters because when you give your hiring managers and your interviewers these tools, you can increase your expectations around the quality of scorecard, and of course also increase therefore your understanding of what's really happening in the interview process. When I'm done, I just will click submit feedback, and that will push that into my ATS. So the ATS is still the home for the scorecard. Metaview just helps you again with that workflow of filling it in. Cool. So again, story so far. I've run my interview. I had a great interview because I wasn't focused on taking notes. I've taken a few moments to fill in my scorecard. It's really well evidenced, and most of it was pre-filled because I didn't have to rewrite what the candidate told me. I also want to give the hiring manager just like a one paragraph summary of this candidate so they can get excited about them or give me some sort of quick feedback. Usually something again that takes me 5-10 minutes after an interview, and it is a bit of a pain because I don't really know if I'm talking about the most important things in that summary. With Metaview actually identifies the most important topics that were discussed during this interview and says to me, hey, I'll write that one paragraph summary for you, or I'll write the sort of the first draft of it at least. Just tell me what you think the most important parts of that interview were. So in my case, I might say, well, I want a summary that covers their career overview, their future goals, the technologies they're familiar with, this is a tech role, and their compensation. And I'll say, go ahead and generate that TLDR for me. So Metaview will take a few seconds, go through the discussion that was had, and write up this summary. So here's the compensation, career overview. They used to work with Google, small company, then Google, future goals. This is great. I'd say it's a little bit lightweight. I want a bit more meat on the bones here. So I'm going to tell Metaview just by clicking here, can you just make this a bit more detailed, please, on the career overview and future goals? Because I think that's the most important stuff. So again, Metaview will take a few seconds, go through the interview, beef up the parts of this TLDR that I've told it I want it to beef up. One of the reasons that I really love, and now I'm sort of super happy with it. One of the reasons I love this is because I think it's a great example of, human machine symbiosis, right? I did not need to regurgitate what the candidate said to me because that's not a good use of my time. But what I did need to do is make the judgment around what topics to include because, I have institutional knowledge about what's important at this company. I've got a relationship with the hiring manager and I know what they care about. I was present in the interview and I got a sense for what was the most important parts of this candidate's sort of profile. So I've used my judgment to choose the topics, but I've just created my paragraph in a few clicks and a few seconds rather than sort of racking my brain to sort of put together something and then write something in sort of good, clear English. I just got AI to do that for me. So one more thing to go through, but just to sort of reflect on what we've seen so far. One, take my notes for me so I can focus on the human being in front of me. Two, help me with my post-interview workflow so that it's not like, laptop on my, when I'm getting in bed at night, get my laptop out and fill in all my scorecards and sort of update all of my HMs. It just takes a few seconds. I just do it in the moment. Last thing is essentially give me superhuman memory and the ability to sort of find information that otherwise I may have forgotten. So let's imagine with this candidate, we put them through to the HM. They really liked them. They went through the whole process. They actually got to the final stage. We just ended up going for another candidate. Doesn't mean this candidate wasn't sort of a good hire for us. It just means, in this particular case, the hiring manager wants someone else. Another role comes up, very similar spec, different hiring manager this time. And I'm thinking, I really want to advocate for this candidate. There's just a couple of things I want to refresh my memory on about them so that I can do that really authentically. So rather than go through and review this whole interview, I'm just going to ask my assistant, what are this candidate's motivational drivers? So you can think of this as like ChatGPT for your interviews. You can use natural language to ask your assistant a question, and it will find the response to that within the interview that you've had. So we'll give that a second to sort of complete that answer. Oh, in fact, I need to make it. Let me try that again as bullet points. Here we go. So what you can see here is there's also a few citations. So it's giving me my answer about their motivations, and it's actually given me a couple of citations as well. Citations are really important when you think about adopting an AI tool, because what you really want to avoid is sort of the chances that an AI is giving you a response that's not actually accurate. So here, what I can do based on these citations is actually jump to that moment that our AI has derived this perspective from and play that back if I want to. So I can be completely confident that actually the response I'm getting from Metaview reflects what was actually discussed in the conversation with this candidate. So in this case, I'm like, okay, great. I feel double infused about this candidate. I know I can advocate for them. Maybe I've listened back to this moment to refresh my memory about really how they show up. And I'm going to sort of tell the HM, like, listen, I've got the person for you. Let's make sure we accelerate this person through to that final stage. And I can do that again with confidence because I'm not just relying on my sort of hastily written notes from 3 months ago about them. I'm doing it based on a really thorough set of notes and importantly, a really sort of precise answer to a specific question that I know the hiring manager was going to have about this candidate. So yeah, that's Metaview in a nutshell. Helps you with your interviews so you can do a better job doing them, and helps you with your workflow after that as well.
That's great. Can I ask some questions?
Please do.
So, can you share the transcript as a recruiter? Can you share the transcript with the hiring manager for them? They can review and they can see that information themselves.
Yeah, you can share share the full transcript. You can share just the notes if you'd like to as well. You can. It's all sort of, again, it almost speaks to what we were talking about during the pod, which is it's your data. It's Metaview's there to just help you with the workflow.
Can we teach when we were asking the questions? I noticed it takes out. I'm assuming doing it from the transcription. So I asked the question, it tracks the answer. Can we teach the platform the questions we're going to ask and help it to, I don't know, qualify whether the answer was aligned or not? Or is that?
I see. The response from the candidate.
Yeah. So I asked question. That question's already in the system. I've taught the system. These are the sort of answers I'm looking for, or using ML to help me qualify what a good response would be to that.
Yeah, we don't do that right now, and that's quite a deliberate. For sure, that's going to be something that will be like a nut that gets cracked at some point. But I think because there's so much we can do that's more on this automation and detection world of things, this area when you get into relying on AI to make decisions is something that, again, we want to do it really deliberately. So I think it's completely the way things should go. And I think actually the way you described it is perfect, which is you'd be training the AI. So you're trying to make an extension of yourself as opposed to a replacement of yourself. So I think that's definitely the right way to go. But right now, it's not, our AI gives no judgment at all about the quality of the answer that the candidate gives.
Cool. Do you also, for companies, you mentioned obviously you integrate with lots of ATS, but in the example you use Lever. What about where companies don't have a scorecard, but they want one? They need a scorecard. Is there anything that you do at all to support them on that, or templates or anything like that helps that process?
Yeah, that's a great call out. Let me just share my screen again real quick. So we have a lot of folks who use the product with either because they don't have, there may be smaller shops and they don't have scorecards or whatever it might be, or just maybe because someone has adopted it personally and they haven't integrated with the ATS yet. So what a lot of those folks will use is they'll create custom templates. So what you're seeing, if you sort of focus on this notes section here, what I tend to use is what we call the question and answer template. What that means is it will structure my notes based on the sequential questions that I asked, which is obviously, that's a really sort of frothy way of saying what most people do, right? Which is they write down their question and they write the sort of the pertinent information from the answers they received. Sometimes you want it something different. Like as a recruiter, you might want a screening template where it's, I really want the high level summary of their experience, their motivation, their compensation, and whether they're available or not. Or actually, I don't want you to sort of structure my notes by the questions I asked. I want you to structure it by the topics we covered, which maybe we talked about the career at the start and the end. I want that all in one place. I don't want to have to look around for that. So what folks can do with Metaview is they can also create their own custom templates. So essentially, you end up designing the prompts that make up your notes, which is essentially, in the grand scheme of things, there's not a ton of difference between that and a scorecard. It's just this is a little bit more obviously conversation specific rather than process specific.
Right.
So people do that. And obviously, while we're looking at templates, it probably makes sense to highlight one of the things that I really focused on the interview portion of this during the demo. You can also use Metaview for every other essentially recruiting related conversation that matters. So we have debrief templates. So if you want to capture your debrief and have the sort of the strengths and weaknesses that different interviewers raise during the course of the debrief, all sort of formatted together automatically, so you don't have to be responsible for doing the note taking during that call. You can do that too. And same thing with intake meetings. You can bring Metaview to your intake meeting. Metaview will capture the role requirements, will capture, you know, a bunch of the context that matters from that conversation too.
Super interesting. That's one of my questions I actually wrote down, which I wish I had Metaview for this to take my thoughts down so that I didn't have to write notes at the same time, was can I teach to, like, my TLDRs might always be the same, right? I teach it to take my TLDRs for me. I mean, I guess that's that feature that you just showed us, right? It's like built in those templates.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, which is and that teaching. You're. I think you've got the right intuition about the way things are going, Chris. Basically, which is it's always going to be the case that the human, like you, me, whatever, is the alpha. Like how you use as ever, how you use tools available to you is what determines the quality of the outcome. So the fact is, you know, if you and I have exactly the same tools, but you're better at using them, you'll get ahead. You know, you'll do better than me and whatever. You know, hopefully we're not too zero sum about these things, but in some cases we're all competing. There's competition at play here, and you know, you'll do better. This is why this coaching thing, this training of your assistant, your AI assistant is so key, because over time, what you're going to work out is which things do I end up really overseeing because I think this is really important and the way I do it is especially key. And I may use AI to augment me, but I'm going to oversee the output. And which things do you decide, you know, after I've seen the AI do this right a couple of times, I'm fine with it. You go ahead and do that. And we're all going to have like slightly different answers to how we do that. Like I might decide, well, I like oversight this, and you decide you like oversight that, and that's going to determine, like, you know, who's the most effective operator. So,
like as a HM, you might want access to some more information than my TLDRs, but we need TLDR that I've created as a process thing, but you actually want to get in and get a bit more out of it or whatever. Can I share?
Yeah.
Can I share the notes? Can I share links so that the HM can come in and play around as well and ask a few more questions back to their own notes? Oh, cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, you can.
Super.
And the cool thing about the sort of having your own templates or even having your own TLDR structure, as you alluded to, is it's sort of like it also opens up this new way to think about what scorecards are. Scorecards are essentially the centralized list of prompts that we're going to push against this interview to see, did we get all the information we need out of it or not? And sometimes the AI is going to fill in those fields, like it's going to respond to that prompt. And sometimes this is a judgment. And so we're going to ask Chris, you're going to respond to this prompt. You know, were they good at communicating? Chris, what's your answer? But just because that's the scorecard that the organization is focused on, doesn't mean that that's the only list of prompts, the only sort of way of looking at this information that everyone cares about all the time. There's like different contexts where people want to sort of like different information people are going to want to digest about the interview, depending on what problem they're trying to solve.
In obviously, I've seen in terms of use Metaview with you know, Zoom or Teams or Google Meet. When you're face to face, is it just you just get the laptop out, put it on record, and that's as simple as that? It was able to pick up from, you know, if someone's a little bit far away.
It does, but we actually don't encourage that. What most of the companies we work with use it predominantly for their remote interviews, be it Zoom or phone or Google Meet or Teams. So we cover all of those sort of remote interviewing use cases. For in person, the way it works best is to maintain that almost analogy of Metaview as your assistant. It's going to dial into but your assistant is never in person, right? If you have Zoom set up in your meeting rooms or Google Meet or whatever, or Teams, then it's going to try and dial in, and then it will record using your native hardware, like the camera that's in the room, microphone that's in the room, which is a much higher quality way of capturing that data, obviously.
Right.
Yeah, 100%. Well, thanks for joining us. Been excellent. Been good fun. Thanks for the demo. Thanks for the chat. Really enjoyed it.
Perfect.
Thanks so much, Chris. Cheers, Darren. Appreciate it.
That's it for this week's show. If you haven't already, please subscribe, follow, download, or order on VHS. But most importantly, share with your TA friends. This has been TA Tech Unboxed, signing off.